Another city has decided to force landlords to pay the unpaid utility debts of their tenants. But is that the landlord's responsibility? I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have another one of these bad articles. So another city has decided that, hey, we want to force landlords to pay the debts of people, other than themselves, okay? So this is another one of those cases where a city has decided the best way that they can recover their lost funds is by making someone else pay the debts for another person. Okay, and in this case, it's the landlord who has to pay the debts of the tenant. So they thought that, hey, we have $100,000 shortfall in the amount of utility debt, and it's so hard to go after these tenants because they don't have any money. But we know who does have money. It's the landlord. So we're going to dump these unpaid utility bills back on the property owners, right? And this is going to have detrimental effects. It always has detrimental effects. And what it comes down to is, hey, now all of a sudden, landlords have to raise their screening criteria and raise their rents. Why do they have to do that? Because simply put, if a tenant leaves a landlord with a whole bunch of debt afterwards, they need to have been able to cover themselves somehow. And they want to increase their screening criteria so they don't have as many bad tenants in there who are leaving them in debt. So yeah, this is going to be bad for tenants. This is going to be bad for landlords. And the worst part of all is that you are, going after someone who did not accumulate a debt to pay that debt. I mean, imagine, from a private perspective, imagine you charging up your credit card and then saying, no, I'm not paying for that credit card debt. And then just, hey, Bob down the street, he'll pay it. Bob has no say in it. Bob didn't accumulate the debt. Bob didn't get any benefit out of it. But now Bob has to pay it? How is that fair? It's just not, okay? And this is exactly what they're doing to landlords. And I wish that these laws, they would get, they should be suing over these laws, okay? And I've seen them in too many places throughout the country. Excuse me. So yeah, I'm 100% against this sort of law. It doesn't surprise me that these towns, they think that they can go and just rob landlords. Essentially, they're stealing. Okay, they're stealing money from landlords to pay off debts for other people. And then they say, well, why don't the landlords go to the debt collectors and get the money if that's such a big... Well, why don't you go to the debt collectors and get the money? It's your debt. It's not mine. Oh, man. Anyway, man, this is so stupid. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think, okay? I brought up probably a half dozen articles with this same storyline. Essentially, landlords getting forced to pay their tenants' debts, right? And I think I did cover only one article where that law got, basically tossed out because people didn't approve of it. And, but it seems like these sort of things are becoming more and more common, and even in places that are traditionally landlord friendly. I don't think that Idaho is known as being a very unfriendly to landlord place, but maybe I'm wrong, okay? So anyway, let's get into this article. This article is coming from kmvt.com, and it says, City of Twin Falls to transfer bad debt responsibility to landlords. The landlord will be responsible for the utility payments if the tenant leaves or the tenant has not paid their utility bill. My question is, why do they even allow the tenants to have the utilities in their names if they're just going to come after the landlord, okay? Basically, when they pass this law, it is giving open season on tenants just not paying their utility bills and then letting it fall on the landlord, especially if they're moving out anyway. So anyway, let's get into this article. Beginning in January, the city of Twin Falls will be transferring the responsibility of utility fees to the landlord instead of the tenant for the rental properties within the city. This is something that they had been looking at for years because the city was losing money on rental properties utility accounts. The amount they were losing was more than $100,000 each year. With this new ordinance, the landlord will be responsible for the utility payments if the tenant leaves or the tenant has not paid their utility bill. Yeah, so the tenant, keep in mind, right? You just read that correctly. The tenant has not paid their utility bill, but the landlord is responsible. Now, how does that work? Okay, the tenant, uses 100,000 gallons of water, right? Just spraying water everywhere, drinking it, fills up a swimming pool full of it, right? The landlord doesn't get to use that water, but the landlord now has to pay that bill. So what do you do in a situation like this? And I've asked this question before, and what other landlords were telling me they were doing was, one, they were adding an estimate of the landlord or of the utility bills into the actual monthly rental cost. So let's say your monthly rental cost is $800, right? So you say, okay, well, the utility costs for this unit are, let's say, $150 a month, right? So now we're going to bring the actual monthly rent that's owed up to $950 instead of that $800. So that way they at least are covering that $150 of utility bills that are going to be recurring every month. And then the landlord puts all the utilities in their own name, because remember, when they put utilities in when they say the bill falls on the landlord, right? If the tenant doesn't pay the utility bill, then they can put a lien on your property, and they could end up taking your property from you, okay, because of a tenant utility bill that wasn't paid. That's how ridiculous all of this is, right? They can steal your property from you in some cases, okay? They can steal your property from you from an unpaid utility bill for somebody else who used up, they could have had the heat blaring at 100 degrees in the middle of the summertime for the entire time, racked up hundreds of dollars a month in gas bills. And guess what? Now it's on you, the landlord, to pay that. Now, you didn't benefit from it. No, you didn't get any use out of it. No, you didn't accumulate that debt, but they want you to pay it. Okay? This is, come on. How bad is it that, they even allow this sort of stuff to happen? It's wrong, okay? Josh Palmer with the city of Twin Falls says 13 of the 16 surrounding cities have this ordinance in effect, and it has greatly reduced their bad debts that they have accrued. For what we do to provide water and wastewater services, it takes money to provide and build and maintain those services. So we can't be losing over $100,000 a year in bad debts, and ultimately it's taxpayers who support that cost. And we know that they don't want to support that either, said Palmer. Hey, maybe they forget the fact that those taxpayers that they're talking about, hey, guess what landlords are? Landlords are the taxpayers, okay? And then you're saying, hey, landlords, well, we can't afford to lose the debt. Well, maybe you should go after the people who actually accumulated the debt, okay? Their name was on the contract. They signed the contract with the utility company, not the landlord. They agreed to pay that amount of money back, and they didn't do it. So what you're really saying is, we don't trust renters, right? That's what this city is saying. We don't trust renters. They don't ever pay their bills on time, and then they skip out on what is owed. So we're going to go after somebody else who has more money and threaten to take their property if they don't pay us our money, because we can't afford to be in debt. No, screw you, okay? Screw you, these government bureaucrats doing this nonsense, okay? This is why a lot of landlords just get out of the business. They're like, you know what? I don't even want to do business here. And you see, it said 13 of the 16 surrounding cities have this same law. Well, you know what? Like I said, this stuff, it's a plague, right? And they see landlords as, they're their money source, where they can just extract money from us. They think that we are the solution to their problems. And meanwhile, all we're doing is we're operating a business. We're paying property taxes. Okay, we're paying our taxes and we're paying our bills, and we still get hit with this garbage on top of it. And it's just wrong. And I'll never stop fighting against these sort of ridiculous laws.